We want to welcome everyone to the Mississippi State Capitol. We're so glad that you're here today. We're here today in support of Convention of States project. I'm the primary Senate sponsor. Representative Eubanks to my right is the House sponsor, has been the House sponsor. I have Representative Wilkes and Representative Hopkins here with me today. And we're just so delighted that we have so many grassroots activists and media in the state to come and listen to what we have to say about Convention of States. So without any further discussion, I would like to introduce Mr. Mark Meckler, who is the president of Citizens for Self-Governance, who has promoted and worked so hard across the states to get this thing passed in 13 states. And if you'll look at this map right here, Mississippi is one of the only states in the Southeast that has not passed this resolution. So I would like for you to welcome and listen to Mr. Mark Meckler, President of Citizens for Self-Governance.
Thanks, Dan. Well, it's really, truly an honor to be here, and I do have this rare privilege of traveling around the country. I've been in 45 states in the last couple of years. I've seen a lot of the state capitals. A lot of them are different, a lot of them the same. The thing that I see that's the same in state capitals all across the country that inspires me so much is people like this. You know, if you watch the news, if you watch the media today, whatever side of the aisle you're on, whatever your political ideology, whether you're Republican or Democrat or Independent, whatever it is, if you turn on the television, what you're going to see is a whole bunch of hate. You're going to see a whole bunch of negativity. You're going to see a whole bunch of people yelling at each other. And if that's your vision of the United States of America, you're going to be pretty upset about what's going on out there. Well, I'm here to tell you, as a guy who's been in 45 states in the last couple of years, that's not America. America today looks a lot like this. People of all persuasions, all parties, all colors, all genders coming together to do what they believe is best for this country. And one of the things that people believe that's so extraordinary with all this divisiveness, with all these 50-50 issues, when we pull the idea of calling a convention of states to take power away from the federal government and give it back to the states, 3/4 of Republicans, 2/3 of Americans overall, over 50% of Democrats, 66% of independents support the idea of a convention of states to take the power away from the federal government and bring it back to the states. Now, some people say this is a radical idea. It's crazy, it's new. It's in the Constitution. It's right there with everything else in the Constitution that we know and love and value. Article 5 of the Constitution gives you and me, the people, the power to take the power from D.C. and to say, no, we're going to bring it back to the states. You know, I go to D.C. a lot too, more than I like to admit. And D.C., to me, when I land there at DCA. D.C. stands for doesn't care. Because the reality is they don't care about y'all. They don't care about people in California or New York or Mississippi or Texas or anywhere else in the country. What they care about is their own power. And there's a fight taking place in the United States of America today. We watch TV, you would think that fight is about health care. You would think that fight is about socialism versus capitalism. You would think that fight is about tax rates. That's not really the fight in America today. They want you to think that's the fight because they want you all to hate each other. They love you to hate each other. The real fight is much more simple. The real fight is about who decides. Think about that question. Who decides in America? Do you get to decide for yourself? You and your doctor? You and your family? You and your school? You and your community? You and your state? Or is somebody in Washington, D.C. who doesn't know you and doesn't care about you going to decide for you? Here's a little known statistic. They know this under the dome, but most of y'all don't know this. 65% roughly of your state budget, 65% is controlled by the federal government. So you think you cast a vote for your representative or your senator and they get to make 100% of the decisions? It doesn't work that way. They got about 35% control over the state budget. That is outrageous, and it was never intended to be that way. So what we're doing is we're using Article 5 of the Constitution to call a convention to bring the states together. It takes 34 states to call it. So far, 13 states have called for this, so we're over 1/3 of the way there. Arkansas last week became the 13th state. You guys are a little bit lonely here in the Southeast, I gotta say, right there in the center of all those states that have called it. It's time for y'all to step up and call for a convention of states. When 34 states call for it, we get together, and what we discuss at that convention is we discuss three things. Ways to put fiscal restraints on the federal government. Is there anybody here who has to balance their checkbook every month? Or you guys balance your checkbook? Or are you allowed to spend more money than you bring in every month? That doesn't work, right? Your state government has to balance their checkbook, but the federal government doesn't have to. So we need to impose a balanced budget amendment. Here's another thing. The federal government does not use what are called generally accepted accounting principles. Think about that. They just pretend that they're not spending money when they're spending money. They don't tell you, they say 22 trillion in debt. I don't even know what that number means. It's so big. There's actually 140 trillion in unfunded liabilities. Every kid today, born today, owes at least $30,000 to the federal government. Your children, your grandchildren are born owing $30,000. Every tax-paying citizen, over $180,000 owed to the federal government. This is outrageous. We need them to get their fiscal house in order. The second thing that gets discussed at this convention is term limits. You go to Washington, D.C., these folks go to D.C., they stay there forever. It's amazing. They go there, and they're average folks, a lot of them, and they come home and they're wealthy. It's incredible how that works. They've got no explanation for this. They're really good at betting on stocks when they're in Washington, D.C. Amazing how it works. So term limits are something supported by 85% of the American public. We also believe in term limits on the federal judiciary and term limits on bureaucrats. Nobody was supposed to go to Washington, D.C. and spend their lives there. And then the last thing is anything that would impose scope and power and jurisdictional restraints on the federal government. Let me tell you specifically what I mean by that. The federal government's powers were designed to be limited and enumerated. They're supposed to be right there in the Constitution. Well, we love the Constitution. I hear people all the time say, oh, well, you know, why do we need to call a convention and change the Constitution? We love the Constitution. A lot of people around here carry pocket constitutions with them. I've got mine on my phone, but it's a little book, 13, 14 pages long, right? That's not your Constitution anymore. I wish it was. There's one right there. That lady's holding up a pocket Constitution. You can order a Constitution from the government printing office, and if you got an extra $130 laying around, I recommend you do it. $130 to order the Constitution. Right now, 2,738 pages without the supplements. With the supplements, it's over 3,000 pages. That little book is now 3,000 pages long. That's every decision ever issued by the United States Supreme Court. Why do we need so many decisions telling us what that beautiful, simple, easy to understand little document means? One of two things. Either the courts are saying the founders were so stupid they drafted a terrible document, or we're so stupid we can't understand a simple document. The bottom line is what we're fighting to do is take that Constitution, that monster, we call it the Conan, the giant annotated Constitution over 3,000 pages, and take it back to something like the original. Now you're going to hear people who object to what we're doing. And you're going to hear only one objection. There's literally only one. The objection is this. The delegates are going to get together, and they're going to get in convention, and there's going to be a runaway convention. It's going to be crazy. We're going to lose our entire Constitution. And I'm just going to tell you that's crazy. I used to give that argument more dignity than it deserves, but it's crazy. Here's why it's crazy. All a convention can do is make suggestions. I call it a suggesting convention. It's actually a convention of states for proposing amendments. All they can do is make suggestions. Anything that comes out of that convention, it takes 38 states to ratify. You do that math in your head. That means it takes only 13 states to stop anything. This should make people on both sides of the aisle feel pretty good about this process, because it means 13 of the most liberal states can stop anything they think is radically conservative, too conservative, right-wing that they might not like. And on the flip side, any 13 conservative states can stop anything they think might be too leftist or too liberal. Article 5 was designed for one thing, one purpose in mind, and that was for the American people. This is really important that you get the history. We lose some of the history sometimes. September 15th, in my opinion, is the most important day in American history. September 15th. Most people don't pay attention to that day. I never forget that day. September 15th is my wife's birthday. Right? I get in big trouble if I forget that. But it's also in American history what's called Article 5 Day. That's the day this article gets introduced in the United States Constitution. And here's how it happens. Colonel George Mason from Virginia steps up to address the assembly there, and he says this. He says, "We've made a terrible mistake with this document. We've given the power to Congress to propose amendments should they deem them necessary, but we failed to give the power to the people acting through their state legislatures." And then he asks a question. Are we so naive? Are we so stupid that we would believe that a federal government that becomes oppressive would propose amendments to restrain its own tyranny? I think they laughed. We don't have video, so we don't know, but here's why I'm pretty sure they laughed. Madison's notes say two things right there, two little words, nin com, that means no comment. Not one person commented, not one person objected, and they unanimously put Article 5, the second clause, into the Constitution. So today we have a responsibility to do our founders proud. We have a responsibility to step up and reclaim our government, and thank God the founders had the wisdom to give us the tools with which to do it. So here's where we're at right now. We have passed the House previously overwhelmingly. Thank you for those of you in the House. We appreciate you guys who did that. We've done that in the past. I think we can do it again this year. I don't think that's a problem. Our problem is in the Senate. And I want to be clear, the Senate here is awesome. We have what's called a fantastic whip count, meaning we know pretty much how most people are going to vote, and it's really good. I believe we would pass the Senate with flying colors. Unfortunately, we're held up by literally one guy in a committee. Does that sound like a republic to you guys? Does that sound like some kind of democracy? That sounds like tyranny to me. So there's the chairman of the Rules Committee that has held us up. Last year, we got killed in the Rules Committee. We never got to a floor vote. This year, right now, it looks like we're held up in the Rules Committee. So what we need y'all to do as grassroots activists is you need to let the chairman of the Rules Committee, Tolson, know we want that thing coming out of the Rules Committee, and we want that going to the floor for an open debate and vote. The people deserve a vote on that. Am I right about that? People deserve a vote. Here's one more thing I want to add, and I think this is really important. You know, in your state, the lieutenant governor is a very powerful position. It's the most powerful statewide elected position. It's true in quite a few states, especially in the South. And your lieutenant governor has expressed support to us personally when we chat with him. But he has not come out publicly in favor of the Convention of States. And this is the man who is poised to be the hero of the Convention of States movement right here in Mississippi. So I would ask that y'all kindly, cordially, with love and respect, go talk to the lieutenant governor, go to his office, talk to Tate Reeves and let him know you want him to step up, be a supporter of Convention of States. I guarantee you, we get the lieutenant governor on board, you guys are going to be state number 14 for Convention of States. Thank you guys for coming out. God bless Mississippi. God bless the United States of America. Now I have the honor of introducing somebody who really doesn't need an introduction. As I travel around with him and as we walk through the Capitol, you see all the people who recognize his face and people who stop him and they want pictures with him, and there's a reason. And he and I were actually talking about this a little bit. He's a very humble guy, and I appreciate his humility more than I could possibly even express. You know, we see a lot of folks in Washington, D.C. that hold themselves up as leaders. We see that in state houses around the country too. People put themselves up on a pedestal as leaders. But true leadership, as we know it, true leadership is all about service, right? Being a servant leader, that's a different thing. And it's a much more difficult thing, to be honest with you. And it's something that you can't pretend. Like, you can't behave or try to behave like a servant leader unless that's in your heart. And so it is my true honor and privilege to introduce you to my good friend, to a man who is the personification of servant leadership, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Mark, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you all in the Mississippi State Capitol with these incredible state representatives and state senators that have come together to talk about something that's so important for the future and the legacy of this constitutional republic. You know, it's sad that we don't teach civics too well in our schools today, and most people don't understand what it means to live in a republic. And Mark talked about something, and I just want to show you, Mark, there's my pocket constitution. And the thing, when you look at this little pocket constitution, it's falling apart. If you want to come up and check it out, it's underlined, it's highlighted, and that's why it has the paper clip on it. Because there was something that happened through 4 generations in my family. Words that we all spoke. And those words were that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And that I take this oath with no purpose of evasion, so help me God. My father said those words as he went off to fight in World War II. My older brother said those words as he went off as a Marine infantryman to fight in Vietnam. On 31 July 1982, I had the privilege and the honor to say those words. And my nephew, who is currently serving in the United States Army as a major, as a paratrooper, as an artillery officer like his dumb old uncle, he said those words as well. And so that's why I'm here in Mississippi. Because what we're talking about is just doing that which we say we take an oath to each and every day. What we're talking about is the thing that binds us together, our rule of law, our Constitution. And when you think about the incredible intellect and prescience of the founding fathers, as they wrote Article 1, 2, and 3, and 4, just think about, as Mark said, how do we keep this thing called the federal government within the constraints that we have written here in this document? He said, this is why we need the Article 5. The Article 5 means that the enumerated powers that are not specifically to the federal government, as it says in Amendments 9 and 10 of the Bill of Rights, they go to the people. They go to the states. But having served up there in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, I will tell you that the last thing that many representatives and senators up there on that Capitol Hill think about is each and every one of you. If we don't get this federal government to understand that the power in the United States of America, in this republic, under the understanding of a system called federalism, is with the states and with the people, then we will lose this great republic. Then we will have said to all of those generations that have borne the cost of wars, that have made the ultimate sacrifice, that have done as Abraham Lincoln said, gave the last full measure of devotion to this great nation, their sacrifices would have been in vain. This is why I'm here. This is why you're here. Because the power in this country is not in Washington, D.C. It's actually not even right here in this state capitol. The power is in each and every one of you. And here's the opportunity for you to choose who you shall empower to govern you, not rule over you. When I look at the fiscal situation here in the United States of America, it's very simple. 49 out of 50 states in the United States of America must balance their budgets. That's why these representatives and these senators are here in this state, and that's what their number one focus is to make sure they're balancing that budget. But if you go a few hundred miles north and east of here, there's a federal government that does not have to balance their budget. There's a federal government that does not want to balance their budget. There's a federal government that continues to push more unfunded mandates and liabilities down on the state, which affects each and every one of you in your walk in life. Because they have to balance this budget. They have to meet the financial needs of this state. You have to exercise your power. You have to make sure that you say to all of those men and women that have stood on freedom's ramparts that our Constitution is still relevant, that our Constitution is still important, that our Constitution is still the rule of law in the United States of America. And those people that don't want to adhere to the Constitution, those people that don't want to do, what is right, then they need to be called out. Because there are too many young men and young women that are still to the day taking that oath to support and defend the Constitution of the greatest nation that the world has ever known. And we need to back them and show them that we appreciate their service and sacrifice. Historically, a lot of people, as Mark said, they want to talk about, well, this is something where we're going to undermine the Constitution. This is not a constitutional convention. This is not what they did after the Articles of Confederation. This is an opportunity for you, we the people, through your state legislatures, to exert your voice, to exert your power, so that we can get the balance right in the United States of America. Because the balance is supposed to be with our states. Too many people make the mistake of saying the United States of America. It's not correct. It's these United States of America. Because that's what the founders wanted to have. The power in our states, because that's where the people are. Your challenge is to go in and, as Mark said, with humility in your heart and a cordial voice, inspire these elected officials to do what's right. Inspire them to stand up for the Constitution. Inspire them to make sure that we pass on a better America to the subsequent generations, which is what this country has always been about. In 240, almost 3 years, we have passed on something greater. And let me close by saying this. Before there was an America, in June of 1775, there was an army. Before there was an America, in October of 1775, there was a Navy. Before there was an America, in November of 1775, there was a United States Marine Corps. Now, the Army let the Air Force go off and, play their own game, and we used to call them the Army Air Corps, but God bless them anyhow. But the point is this. America is not just some geographic piece of land. It's an ideal. It's something that we knew had to be defended before we put it on paper. That is what you are called to do. Defend this ideal of liberty, of freedom, of democracy, of individual and state sovereignty and federalism. May God bless the great state of Mississippi. May God bless you all. And may God bless these United States of America. Thank you.
If I can ask my legislative colleagues to come up here with us. It is the habit and the tradition of the Mississippi Legislature to recognize, to honor, and to commend great Mississippians and great Americans. And I think we would all agree that Colonel West's service to this country, both in the military and the Congress and what he's doing now, warrants just such a recognition. We are very proud of the job you've done and the job you are doing. And on behalf of the Mississippi House of Representatives, we'd like to offer you this resolution.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am a graduate of the University of Tennessee, but I won't sing Rocky Top, so thank you very much.
Go to conventionofstates.com, press the button, sign the petition. More importantly, get 10 of your friends to do the same. When you sign the petition, then that sends a letter to your state legislator. You go on the list in their district as a supporter. We deliver those lists to the state legislators. It means something to them.